I kind of questioned from, I think that was the first episode when Lou and Marvin were at the club. And the two random guys that approached Marvin about buying drugs. Here we see that they pop up towards the end of the episode where RAQ has gone to get her hair done at the beauty salon, and it turns out that like the owner is trying to sell, and she's trying to get rid of like this dirty cash that she has. And you can see like the gears turning in her head of buying the property, right? It's like a place to park some of her money. And fast forward to the end of the episode, we see her walking around with who's probably like the guy's real estate agent or broker or whatever it is, or maybe his lawyer or something like that, where RAQ is there to see the property from more of a business perspective and to discuss numbers. And while she's out in the open and whatnot, we see the two guys that Marvin had previously met, that they're looking at her, like taking pictures and whatnot. So it's like, for the moment, she's kind of got her guard down, not really aware of her surroundings. And here it is. I mean, but then again, if she's out on the street, there's not much that she can do about the feds taking her picture, right? The thing might be, they might ask questions about, like, what is she doing at this property and whatnot, and dig a bit deeper, especially if she does end up acquiring it, right? And it's this thing of, how exactly does RAQ show income, right? Because it's like, what job does she have? Even with like purchasing the record label, how would she show where she got the money from to buy the label or to buy into the label when Crown was around? And if she now purchases this hair salon, and especially if she's purchasing it cash, how is she going to show where she got the money from for that, right? Because we know the label, it's not like it had any hit records or anything like that where it was minting money. So it's going to be interesting to see where and how things go with that. What story or excuses is she going to come up with to answer whatever questions the feds eventually ask. And now, as part of this is that, the two guys looking at her, they make, some crude remarks about her, but basically, to their eyes, she doesn't look like a drug dealer, right? And it's this thing of attracting unwanted attention. The very unique in RAQ with this entanglement. I don't know, man. Like, what is this exactly? I figured like he was stopping by to tell her about like Ronnie and stuff. She'd tell him about the feds or whatever. They barely touched on any of that before they started touching on each other. And even with their canoodling, let's say, and pillow talk after, they're still not really talking about anything. What we do know is that RAQ still has like a lot of dirty cash that she needs to get clean, right? Kind of making her way towards settling into this house, but so much stuff to take care of, I will say that with the addition of more characters, where the show really used to just follow those core characters, because you have other people in play now, there's like, not necessarily less screen time. It feels like you're seeing less of what RAQ is doing, as attention is kind of being spread amongst more characters now. But with like RAQ, I'm kind of curious as to, like, you get the sense that she's still trying to figure things out as far as like what her next moves are going to be. And we've seen her like, go to Famous's place looking for Kanan. We've seen her go to Marvin's place to give like the necklace to Jukebox and things like that. But at the same time, it's like a manipulation thing as well with Jukebox, right? Like I pop up to give you this nice necklace and as well to ask you questions about Kanan. You know, so it's like she's kind of throwing money and gifts and stuff like that around as a way of like getting info on Kanan and what he's doing. Manipulative. But then aside from that, aside from like Kanan, it's unclear what other moves she's making to prepare for like her future, you know, or even just as far as dealing with this current situation of the police and the feds being very active. So, and I guess part of that might be if she legitimately has put her street business to a halt, she wouldn't have much of anything going on in that regard, you know, so thus we see more of her attention placed on Kanan and like what he has going on. But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, right? Like her response right now is like you kind of see like from the street stuff, she seems to be doing less to try to manipulate the situation as we saw in previous situations, right? Like if you think back to the first season or even the second season, and I think part of that is because she's trying to make her way out of the business. Her plan right now, or the action she's been taking, has really just been to be kind of observant, trying to pick up on if the feds are onto her, if the feds are watching her, right? We see this when she was leaving Famous's place. It's the first time since probably the first season, and even during the first season, right, where RAQ's paranoid, but that paranoia isn't really coming from the street, right? And actually, when you think about it, the first season, she wasn't really paranoid because until things really popped off with Unique, she wasn't really like concerned about him like that, right? Like she was moving about and not really concerned about much of anything, right? Making her moves. But here we see that she's not really active in the streets, right? You see her looking over her shoulder. She's paranoid about the feds possibly coming for her, or whether or not they're watching her, aware of her. But it's really like the first time since the first season that she hasn't really had any kind of a threat from the streets, right? Because she doesn't have to worry about Unique. She doesn't have to worry about the Italians for the time being, though I think they might still come back into play. And so in that regard, like, she's not really looking for anyone to come at her from the streets, right? Because theoretically, she's out of the business. But unbeknownst to her, she's got like a big threat looming in the person of Ronnie, you know? And he's not on her radar as yet, which is like incredibly dangerous, you know? Because here it is that she's thinking she's wrapped up stuff with the Italian, you know, things are cool between her and Unique. She's not out here in the streets. And it's like, right when she's probably getting comfortable with the street stuff as far as that she doesn't have anything to worry about there, there's actually like this really big threat there. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. You know, like you can kind of see her on the one hand with the street stuff, letting her guard down. But then on the other hand, with like the police, where it's like, she was never really worried about Howard, you know, personally, right? Her concern with Howard during the first season was what he might do to Kanan because of Kanan and the whole Buck-20 situation, right? And during the second season, she kind of brushed all of that stuff aside. But it's like, if you think about it, every time RAQ gets comfortable, things get hectic, right? In the first season, a lot of her drama came from Kanan and his nonsense, right? The second season, when she felt like she had everything wrapped up at the projects and then had like a good plan to move into Jersey and was kind of getting comfortable, just assumed that like she had everything worked out, that's when everything started going wrong for her, right? Like the moment she starts to get comfortable, there's like some big threat that pops up from on the street. And so in this case here, it's Ronnie. So it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out there. As far as, is he going to make a direct run for her? As far as to do something to her directly, or what's going to come from that? And will she survive it? Because it's like, she's more of a main character than, let's say, Scrappy or Burke. But at the same time, like we saw her get shot last season, Marvin as well. Lou was caught up in that fire in the first season. So it's like they can be injured, but I'm not sure if it's quite at the point where any one of those, let's say, and Howard was shot at the beginning of the first season. So they've all been injured, these main characters that have been around since the first season. But it remains to be seen if the show is willing to take it so far as to kill any of them. So it's going to be interesting. I think she's going to catch some hell, though. I knew it. That Ronnie would end up finding out about RAQ and Unique. I would assume that it's a little bit unclear, but maybe he followed Unique or something like that and ended up following him to RAQ's house. But going back to the previous season, I thought, like, way too many people knew where RAQ lived. The fact that Unique was able to just, going back to, like, the first episode, that Unique was able to just pop up at her house, it's like, never mind, you might be out the game, like, you've done things and you still have to worry about people coming back at you. It just feels like she's a little bit too out in the open. Even with moving from the house there on the south side, which I felt like they were hustling a little bit too close to where they were living. With her now being out here in the suburbs, it still feels like too many people know where she lives. And it's like, if someone really wants to bring drama to her, it's going to be easy to do it. There in Queens, we saw the Italians came by and they shot up the house. With her being out here in the suburbs, especially with it just being her, right? It just seems like a problem. It's like Ronnie now knows where she lives. We don't have like an exact time of, or an idea of how long he's been there, but if we assume that he followed Unique there, Unique and RAQ were in there canoodling, let's say, and he now sees Unique leaving, we can assume that Unique's been there for a good little while, and there would really be no reason for Unique to be stopping by her house at night for them just to have a conversation. They could have a conversation like at the diner like they did last season, or out on the street, or at that park that they used to meet at in the first season. So it's like, for him to be at her house at that time of night, and for what was likely a good amount of time, I'm sure Ronnie can put two and two together and, come up with an entanglement. And even prior to that, we saw that he probably picked up on something going on with Unique and kind of dropped a hint there to Panessa that, Unique might have like something going on the side, which I don't understand why RAQ would involve herself with this situation. It just seems so incredibly messy. Like, her and her brothers have history with Unique. Fine, fair enough that they're not trying to kill each other anymore, but I don't think that means you should be loving each other down either. And then to add to it, that she knows that he's with this woman, he has a child with her, but maybe it's a matter of RAQ knows that she doesn't necessarily have anything to fear from Panessa, so she's not worried about her. But it just seems incredibly messy. It's like not hustling near where you eat, and also not getting into mess like this so close to home, It just seems like you shouldn't be mixing business with pleasure. Never mind that you're getting out of the business, your ties to Unique were as a result of your business. And it just seems like a bad idea to have this stuff linked. But we'll see.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my movie review playlist. Go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw.